fruits, nuts, and seeds.
Chapati, thank you for teaching us to be healthy.
The energy that I feel with these meals.
Chapati, that was really yummy.
Like a kid with new toys. Health is my greatest joy. Come and see, come and be with our host Chapati.
Hello and welcome to Food with Life. I am your host Chapati, and we're here at the Conscious Life Expo in Los Angeles, California, with a very revered guest, Dr. Eric Pearl. Very, very nice to have you.
Thank you. It's my honor to be here.
You wrote a very, very nice book called The Reconection, Healing Others and Healing Yourself. It's a big title, and there's a big concept, reconnection. Tell me a bit more about it so I can learn.
Well, the background story is I practiced as a doctor of chiropractic for 12 years. When one night a few strange things happened. I was awakened by a very bright light. I opened my eyes to see what it was. It wasn't anything seemingly mystical or metaphysical. It was just the lamp next to my bed turned itself on. I had that lamp for 10 years.
Automatic? It just went on?
It hadn't turned itself on before after 10 years, but just woke me up, came on. And it felt as if I was being watched, that there was someone in my home. It was such a real feeling that I got up with a knife and a can of pepper spray and my Doberman pinscher. I went hunting through the house. I couldn't find anyone. I thought it had to be my imagination. I went back to sleep. But on that Monday, I went into my office. 7 of my patients, independently of one another, insisted that they were feeling people in the rooms with us, that they felt hands touching their body, 3, 4, 5, 6 hands. When I held my hands near them, I would see tiny little muscles in their forehead move. It would pull at their eyes would dart back and forth. Fingers would move, arms and legs would jerk. When they opened their eyes, they said they were seeing colors they'd never seen before, smelling flowers they'd never smelled before, and they started reporting healings, real healings. They were getting up out of wheelchairs, some of them, vision and hearing returning. Some patients were coming in days later showing laboratory results where their cancer tumors had vanished. Parents of some of my younger patients were calling me and telling me that their children with cerebral palsy or epilepsy were able to walk and run and play and speak normally, didn't need medications, weren't having seizures. Their doctors would call and ask me what I had done. I said I didn't do anything and don't tell anyone, which went over about as big as the United States government trying to just say no to drugs.
AMA wouldn't approve of it too.
Yeah, well, you know, actually, at this point in time, I've trained over 75,000 people around the world. The book, The Reconection, is in more than 36 languages, and a lot of medical doctors, maybe about 10 or 15,000 medical doctors, nurses, physical therapists, researchers have studied this work. So soon my patients started calling and asking me to teach this, and I said, teach it, you have to be crazy. I'm waving my hands in the air looking like an idiot. You go outside, wave your hands in the air, let me know what your neighbors have to say about you. But my patients would call me and they'd say, I drove home and I came to my house, and before I could hit the button to open the automatic garage door, it opened by itself, or I walked inside and my lamp or my television started turning on and off and on and off. I felt sensations in my hands. I would hold my hands near someone in my family, and my uncle could walk after the stroke, or my aunt regained her hearing or her ability to speak. And we found that once we interact with this expanded level of healing, it changes something within us. We found that this takes us beyond all the energy healing techniques that we know of, because it frees us of technique itself. And when we free ourselves of technique, we expand into a spectrum that includes light and information that many of the researchers feel they have not seen here before. It seems to bring about healings that are often fairly instantaneous and tend to last for a person's lifetime. And it has to do with the concept of, among other things, light. Now, we speak of light as a spiritual concept. But we know now today from the work of Dr. Fritz Popp in Germany and others that science has proven the DNA in each of our cells emits specific levels of light, that when our health is diminishing, that light is dimming. When our health is coming back up, that light vibration is coming back up. Light plays many roles. Without the light from the sun, the earth wouldn't live, and we wouldn't live on the earth. Without the light in our DNA, our bodies wouldn't communicate. Without the light within us, there would be no consciousness, because light is consciousness. And even when we leave the physical body, people who have died and come back to talk about it share the story of returning to a light that is our home, that we all come from, and that we all return to.
Well, we're going to take a break, but I'm fascinated about this light and want to learn more for our wonderful viewers.
I'd like to learn more.
I am your host, Chapati. This is Food with Life. Stay with us. We'll be back soon with our wonderful Dr. Eric Pearl.
Or food with light.
Very good idea. Hello and welcome back to Food with Life. I am your host, Chapati, and we're here with our wonderful guest, Dr. Eric Pearl, who's sharing a wisdom and knowledge about what we call, or he has called, reconnection. You began to talk a bit about light. Light is everywhere, even in darkness. Tell me more about your idea and concepts of light and its manifestation within individuals.
Well, let me tell you an interesting story that led to my decision to call this the reconnection, reconnective healing, and led to our understanding of a connection specifically with light. Now, before I tell you the story, I want you to understand that I used to be a sane and normal person, all right? I was not raised this way. This is not something that I studied. This happened to me. And in short form, you can say I went home on a Thursday night thinking I was a doctor. I came back to my office on a Monday and I was something else. My parents always told me I was something else, but this was probably not what they had in mind.
Right.
Approximately 4 months into this, one of my patients came in for chiropractic. And at this point in time, I would adjust my patient, always tell them to close their eyes and relax. I would hold my hands near them, feel the healing sensations, watch their bodies involuntarily move. When I did it with this patient, his head jerked backwards, his eyes rolled to the back of his head, his mouth open, his tongue started to move in a way that you could see was forming vowels, and air began to escape through his mouth. The air condensed itself into a voice different than his. And the voice said, "We are here to tell you to continue doing what you are doing. What you are doing is bringing light and information onto the planet." Then he said a few other things. Then I had to stop the session because my other patients were waiting for me. I thought this was something unique to this one patient. You know, you hear of patients or of people who have a voice come through them, whether it's real, whether it isn't, I don't know. Just something about this person, I thought. But 2 days later, 3 other patients, heads jerked, eyes rolled, mouth open, tongue moved, air came out, and they said the first 2 phrases that this patient said. "We are here to tell you to continue doing what you are doing. What you are doing is bringing light and information onto the planet." Then 2 of them added, "What you're doing is reconnecting strings, and what you're doing is reconnecting strands." The first patient came back, said, "What you're doing is reconnecting strings." None of these patients knew each other. A few days later, 5 other patients did the same thing. Over the next 3-month period of time, over 50 different patients lost consciousness and spoke 6 word-for-word phrases. I gave you the first 4. Now, when these healings came about, people said to me, "What do you call this?" And I say, "It doesn't have a name." They said, well, it has to have a name. I said, well, it doesn't have a name. They said, well, it has to. I said, no, you see, if you give it a name, you put it in a box. You say, this is what it is, and this is what it isn't. And there were two things I knew. One, I knew that I did not know what this was. And two, I knew that I definitely didn't know what it wasn't, because it was getting larger and larger and larger. But a lot of people couldn't stand the fact that it didn't have a name. So in the Northeast U.S., they started calling it Eric Pearl healing. In the Southeast, they called it Pearl high frequency healing. All around the country, they started giving it different names. So I thought, what do I call this? What do I call this? And I thought of the third and fourth phrase. What you're doing is reconnecting strings. What you're doing is reconnecting strands. So temporarily, I thought I'd call it reconnective healing. And as soon as I did, word got on. Now, what are strings and what are strands?
That was my question. What is strings and what are strands?
I thought strings and strands were the same thing. I thought, for reasons we don't have time to go into in this interview, but it is in the book, I knew that strands meant DNA. I thought, you know, like you pull out a hair, it's stringy, it's strandy, it meant the same thing, DNA. It was years later I heard about string theory, simultaneous planes of existence. We're here right now doing this. Something else is going on in this very same space on a different dimension. 500 years in the past, 5,000 years in the future. We don't see them, they don't see us. Or maybe they do. Because who was it who reached through the illusion of the fabric of time and space to turn over 50 different human beings into living broadcast systems to say these same phrases? Now, the DNA emits light. The DNA communicates with our brains. How do our brains work? They don't work the way we were taught. Think of a computer. You have a metal box. It does nothing until you put a software program into it. Then you get information from the computer and information from the internet field. Upgrade the software, better access to the information in the computer and better access to that internet field. Our brains don't just access information from within. They transduce, they transform from this field that today science calls zero-point field, a field of information that we all are in touch with. What happens?
Can you hold that thought?
Oh, I could.
Get into that.
I could.
I want to get into
Okay, go ahead.
I am your host, Chapati. This is Food with Life. We'll be right back with some more interesting, wonderful information about this grand field that Dr. Eric Pearl is talking about. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Hello and welcome back to Food with Life. I am your host, Chapati, and we're here with our wonderful Dr. Eric Pearl, who's sharing some wonderful knowledge and information about this wonderful field of reconnection. You were beginning to elaborate.
So think of the zero-point field as an endless field of information we're always in touch with. When children on a school bus on a long ride, one child falls asleep, another child stares at them until they wake up. They're in the field. You think about a friend you haven't thought about for 3 years. 3 minutes later, the phone rings, it's them. We're in the field. So people who are geniuses, people who are psychics, people who are healers, it's no big mystical secret. They're just tuning into the field a little more sensitively here, a little more sensitively there, not overthinking it and responding to the information.
So it's a higher field which we all have access to, yes?
We all exist in, we always have. Science is only beginning to recognize and acknowledge it now. We have to remember, a lot of people think that if science hasn't proven it, it can't exist. But we're looking at it backwards. If it didn't exist first, science would have nothing to discover. We confuse absence of proof with proof of absence. So now we recognize zero-point field. We realize that our brains transduce this information down into conscious, bite-sized portions that we can recognize.
I have a question. Is this zero-point field the same as universal consciousness?
I believe yes.
It's a different name.
Absolutely. And there's a book out by Lynn McTaggart, a wonderful author. She's interviewed many quantum physicists around the world, condensed their information into relatively easy to understand everyday language to explain a lot of this, and her book is called The Field, and it's excellent. Now, just like we talked about the computers and the internet field, what if our brains are our hardware, our computer hardware? What if our DNA is our software? And what if, as 5, or I believe 6 now, studies have already shown, what is happening with reconnective healing is that we are restructuring the DNA, bringing about more coherent, higher vibratory levels of light. Then what we are really doing is facilitating a human software upgrade, which allows for better access to the information within the brain, better access to that multidimensional field of information, which means, since we go where our attention goes, this is allowing us to become more multi-dimensional human beings.
Tapping into more of what is innate, yes? Which is there, except our eyes have been closed. And now you're showing us a way to open them.
Now we're learning to see. We are reconnecting more fully with who we are, which includes our consciousness and our awareness. Now, when I teach seminars on this, I introduce this in steps. So, for instance, most of the seminars that we teach, and I'm on the road teaching all around the world 45 weeks a year, I give a 3-hour presentation, usually on a Friday night. We talk about the history, the theory, the philosophy, the research, some of the things we're discussing today. We give everyone an opportunity to feel this in your hands because it's very palpable, very clear and easy to feel. And we bring up some volunteers from the audience to give live demonstrations so you can see the reality of the healings. But Saturday and Sunday is very different. It's a real working seminar. I always tell people, don't come, and I mean it, don't come to this Saturday, Sunday seminar if you think that we're all going to sit around, hold hands, burn incense, beat a drum. It won't happen. I demonstrate the work from the stage. Then we go to massage tables. So if you're at the seminar, for instance, one person might be lying on your massage table, you would be standing up. My team and or I would walk around to you, take your hand, show you how to begin to feel and access these frequencies, and you would most likely see the body of the person on the table jerk, or their eyes start to move. We'll show you how to feel or find a different portion of it, feels different. You'll see their body movement change. You'll start to correlate what you're feeling, what you're finding with the physical response you can see in that person on the table. We go back to the chairs, we talk about it, we show you something else, we go back to the massage tables again. It's a working seminar. But by the end of one weekend, not 5 years or 1 year or 3 months, but one weekend, I can pretty much make you 2 promises, which are A, you will be able to do anything and everything in the way of healing that I can do.
Yeah.
And B, you will be able to do anything and everything in the way of healing that any human being anywhere on this planet can do, whether they were raised by monks in a cave in a mountaintop in Tibet or whether they work out of a church in Brazil. Whether it's their family lineage, it makes no difference, because today it is about no longer looking at people to see what makes them separate, distinct, or special. Today it's about us learning to say what makes us each the same. And in order to see what makes us each the same means that we have to step up into becoming 100% of our capacity. And when we do that, we are all 100% at the same level.
We're going to talk about this more. I have some wonderful questions. Okay, so hang on with us.
Okay.
I am your Chapati with our wonderful guest, Dr. Eric Pearl. We'll stay with us. We'll be right back. Hello, and welcome back to Food with Life. I am your host, Chapati, and we're here with our wonderful guest, Dr. Eric Pearl. We were just talking a bit about innate potential, that which we're endowed with, and many of us have not used much of it. Tell me a bit about it.
Well, it's an endless potential, so we are all using it, but we're learning to access and utilize more and more. I look at this as the concept of, well, think of the sun. The sun itself as the big picture, and then the individual rays of the sun, which are hitting the earth, but always changing, bouncing back, coming in different form. And yet holographically, within each ray is the entirety of the sun. And yet, from another perspective, the ray is a part of the sun. The ray is an expression of the sun here on earth. Each of us, I believe, are an expression of God, or love, or the intelligence of the universe here on earth. So there's a universal intelligence, and within each of us is our innate intelligence, which is the physical and spiritual expression of that innate intelligence. So on one hand, you can say with ego, I am God. Yet on the other hand, without ego, we can understand that we are each God because we are an expression of God holographically.
Yeah, the ego seems to always get in the way, always blocks that universal experience of the light.
Well, I don't think that ego is a mistake.
Not block, but obscure.
Yes, because it can't be blocked. And ego is not a mistake. I don't believe that God was working over the creation of humankind, dropped something in and went, oops, now I'll never get that out. Ego is not something we should starve to death. I believe that ego is something to teach us balance, that without ego we might not strive to be better, we might not be making our presence known here, and I do believe we're here to make our presence known, among other things. But when ego leads becomes the problem. When we allow ego to be the teacher of balance, it becomes a wonderful gift.
Yeah, yeah. When it takes over.
That's the problem. Yeah.
I think the key is having a sense of the ego and not allowing it to be the boss.
To access this new level of healing, we have to overcome ego. We have to overcome the ego that says, yes, it's all here and I can do it now. We have to overcome the ego and learn to observe without judgment and learn to recognize that we're being offered the gift of accessing this new level of healing. But the requirement is that we overcome ego sufficiently to say, and I am here to learn it from another person. This gift is being taught and shared. And when we try to sit in a corner and meditate it in, it's like trying to meditate in the ocean. A, the ocean isn't coming, or B, if it does, you better run, it's a tsunami. You actually have to take your spiritual little butt, stick it into a bathing suit, and walk across the beach and into the ocean. And then, and only then, you can become equally wet with ocean water. This new level of healing, part of the gift, the requirement, is that we share in the learning with another human being. The gift of this work is that it allows us to transcend our techniques, like removing training wheels from a bicycle so you master the bicycle. The gift of the technique comes only when you transcend it. The challenge to the ego is whether or not we're willing to transcend the technique. The gift is that this allows us to completely demystify the healing process so it can become clear and transparent for everyone, and the challenge to the ego is whether or not we're willing to allow the healing process to be demystified.
So, what is the view then that reconnection, your concept, would have on meditation, where people do go within?
You know, meditation is a path that allows you to get to many places on your journey. When you access the reconnective healing frequencies, what a lot of the studies have shown is that it changes the brain focus and readings and the measurable light and sound that emits from the hand and the body to a level beyond that they've been able to see in masters of meditation. It seems to bring you into that state fairly instantaneously. So it's a wonderful state, and there are different paths and different doors. You could walk through the path of meditation, and today we're offered a more instantaneous path to access it in a more expanded form.
Thank you again. Our pleasure to have you.
My pleasure.
I am your host, Chapati. This is Food with Life. We very much want to thank you for watching. Be well, be happy, reconnect, heal others, and heal thyself. We'll see you very soon. Bye-bye.
Chapati, thank you for teaching us